I woke up to the sound of footsteps in my bedroom, slow, heavy, and when I opened my eyes, there was a man standing over me. But to explain how that happened, I need to go back a few hours. That Friday night, my parents were out of town and I had the whole house to myself. I was 17 and I thought it would be fun to stay up late, watch some horror movies, and eat junk food. Nothing unusual. By around midnight, I started to get tired. I locked the doors, double-checked the windows, and went upstairs to my room. I left a little lamp on in the hallway because the house always felt creepier when it was completely dark. I must have fallen asleep quickly, because the next thing I remember is hearing a noise. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, a thud, followed by what sounded like the floor creaking. I sat up in bed and listened. The house was old, so creaks weren't unusual, but this was different. It was rhythmic, almost like footsteps. I told myself it was nothing, rolled over, and eventually drifted back to sleep. Hours later, I woke up again. This time, it wasn't the creaking, it was breathing. Not mine, slow, uneven, coming from somewhere in my room. I kept my eyes shut, my heart pounding. My first thought was that I was imagining things, but then the mattress shifted, just slightly, like someone was pressing down on it. That's when I remembered the sound from earlier. The footsteps. I opened my eyes. Standing over me was a man. Tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. His face was shadowed, but I could see enough to know he was real. Not a dream, not sleep paralysis. I didn't scream, I couldn't. My throat locked up. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring down at me. Somehow, I managed to roll out of bed and grab the lamp from my nightstand. I swung it toward him as hard as I could. The lamp slipped out of my hands, hit the wall, and the bulb shattered, flooding the room with a quick burst of light, and then he was gone. I sprinted down the hall, out the front door, and straight to my neighbor's house, banging on their door until they let me in. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the house, room by room. In my closet, they found the crawl space door open. The one that led into the attic. The officers told me later that someone had been living up there. They found food wrappers, a blanket, and even a small notebook. I never asked what was written inside. My parents had the crawl space sealed shut the next week. But sometimes, I swear I still hear the sound of footsteps at night. The sound of my front door unlocking jolted me awake. I live alone, and I never gave anyone a spare key. But to understand how I ended up frozen in bed, listening to my own door opening, I need to rewind to earlier that night. I had just moved into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My first place completely on my own. That Friday night, I celebrated by ordering takeout and binging shows on my laptop. Around 11 p.m., I tossed the containers in the trash, locked the deadbolt, slid the chain across, and checked that the windows were shut. I was cautious. Maybe even paranoid, but the building was old, and the neighborhood wasn't the best. By midnight, I was in bed, scrolling through my phone until my eyes grew heavy. That's when I heard it, a faint scratching sound. It seemed to come from the door to the hallway. I muted my phone and listened. Nothing. Probably just the pipes or someone moving around in another apartment. Still, I got up, double-checked the locks, and even pulled a chair in front of the door. Then I went back to bed, laughing at myself for overreacting. A few hours later, I woke up again. This time, to the sound of metal. A slow, deliberate click, click, click. It took me a second to realize what it was. Someone testing the lock. My heart started hammering. I told myself it could just be a neighbor fumbling with the wrong door. That happens, right? But then, the sound changed. It wasn't random anymore. It was precise, intentional, like someone who knew exactly how to pick a lock. I stayed as still as I could, listening to the rattle of tumblers being worked, and then silence. For a long time, nothing. Long enough that I convinced myself it was over. I even started to drift off again, until the unmistakable sound of the deadbolt sliding open filled the room. I snapped upright, staring at the door. The chain was still latched, but it strained against the frame as someone pushed against it from the other side. My phone was across the room on the desk, too far to reach without moving. My eyes darted around, searching for anything I could use as a weapon, and then, slowly, the pressure stopped. Whoever it was had realized the chain was holding. A pause, and then, two pale fingers slipped through the gap, wiggling against the chain like they were testing how strong it was. That was enough to snap me out of my paralysis. I lunged for my phone, dialed 911, and screamed that someone was breaking in. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line until officers arrived. By the time they got there, the hallway was empty. But the officers confirmed something I hadn't imagined. The door showed fresh tool marks, scratches, right around the lock. The police told me whoever it was had skill. They weren't just some random drunk neighbor. They knew how to pick locks, and they had probably been watching me since I moved in. The landlord replaced the locks the next day and installed a reinforced steel chain, but no matter how many times I check it before bed, I still hear that sound sometimes. The faint click, click, click in the middle of the night. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard the sound of my front door unlocking, but I hadn't touched it. And the only person who had been inside earlier was the pizza delivery guy. To explain how that moment became the single most terrifying night of my life, I need to rewind a few hours. It was a Saturday night, and I was home alone. My parents were out of town, and I decided to make the most of it. Order pizza, watch some horror movies, and stay up late. Around 8 p.m., the delivery arrived. When I opened the door, the guy just stared at me for a second too long before handing over the box. He didn't smile, didn't say much, just kept glancing past me into the house. His uniform shirt was wrinkled, and his hand shook a little when I gave him the cash. As he walked back to his car, I had this weird feeling, like he was memorizing the place. But I brushed it off. People are awkward sometimes. The rest of the night felt normal. I ate, cleaned up, and went upstairs. By midnight, I was in bed scrolling my phone, the TV murmuring in the background. That's when I heard it. A single knock. Quiet. Slow. I froze. Who would knock at midnight? I crept to my window that overlooked the driveway and peered out. His car. The same beat-up sedan the pizza guy drove earlier, parked down the street, engine off. I backed away, my stomach twisting. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of gravel crunching. Footsteps, approaching the house. I dialed my parents, but no answer. My phone was at 10%, and I didn't want to waste it. I just stood there in the dark, listening. Then came the rattle of the doorknob. Slow, deliberate, like someone trying to see if it would open. I panicked, tiptoed halfway up the stairs to grab the bat from my room. And that's when it happened. The front door clicked, unlocked. I know I had locked it. I triple-checked earlier, which meant he had another way in. The door opened an inch. Then another. No words, just silence. I held the bat tight, ready to swing. That's when I caught it. Something glinting in his hand. A key. I slammed the door shut before he could step inside, threw the deadbolt back, and shoved the chair against the knob. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone as I dialed 911. When the police arrived, the car was gone, but what they found on my porch made my skin crawl. A small ring of keys. Dozens of them. The officer said people like him collect them, test them, until one works. The delivery company told us later that the man wasn't even one of their drivers. He'd shown up at the store earlier that night, grabbed an order off the counter, and left before anyone noticed. I still can't eat pizza without checking the locks 3 times over. Because sometimes, I swear I hear that quiet knock at the door again.